Welcome to Leading Minds Revealed, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on how today's top leaders harness the power of mindfulness to conquer the fast-paced, ever-changing world of business. In each episode, we sit down with C-suite executives and leaders who share their strategies for navigating rapid change with skill and clarity. Join us as we uncover the transformative mindsets that drive extraordinary leadership. These insights aren't found in business books, and they'll revolutionize the way you lead. And now, here's your host, Michael Apollo.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Leading Minds Revealed. In this episode, we're going to explore the role of purpose in leadership, how it can help us stay anchored through change and complexity, and how purpose can positively impact culture. My guest today has been innovating and pushing the boundaries of corporate strategy and community-driven wellness. This space has been evolving tremendously over the past decade. She's the corporate wellness director at Coral Isle Group Insurance, where she's spent 15 years spearheading transformative wellness initiatives across the Caribbean and Atlantic islands. From launching Blue Zone-inspired programs to integrating biometric analysis for employees and mindfulness into leadership development, she's redefining what it means to lead with purpose. And so with that, meet my guest, Jacqueline Perrault. Welcome to the show, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for the nice introduction.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Well, before we jump in, I just want to say that this conversation has been a long time in the making. Jacqueline and I have known each other for many, many years. And since our first collaboration, I've always been inspired about how deeply she leads with purpose, presence, and a genuine commitment towards really understanding, like, what's the leading edge of well-being? Like, how could we really support communities and to positively impact health? And so in preparation for this episode, we had a meaningful conversation about what it really means to lead through complexity, how purpose can be an anchor when things feel uncertain. So, Jacqueline, I'd love to start there. And so, purpose was something that came up, as we prepared for this episode. And so what does purpose mean to you, and why is it so central to your leadership today?
Okay. So yeah, leading with purpose, it isn't just a buzzword to me. It's really a whole mindset. So helping people connect to kind of a deeper meaning and making something out of what they're doing every day to the team. And I've seen firsthand what happens when you lack purpose, but I can see how transformational it can be when you actually have purpose. So I try to make that an intention in terms of my leadership.
And so, like, what are some of the ways that that sort of like lives for you on a day-to-day basis?
Just being able to connect with my team on the day-to-day and just making sure that they're contributing to the overall goal and that they know the why and the direction of where we want to go, and just taking them back to the why as well in maybe some of the small tasks that they're doing, just making them find purpose in that. And if they're not, maybe we can redirect or realign.
And so, I mean, there's just so much pulling at our attention today, where we can sort of fall out of that alignment, where, if we don't redirect, we'll just go and start chasing all these new projects, new tasks, things that are just seemingly so urgent. In this time of rapid change and uncertainty, what role does sort of that purpose, returning back to the why, play in guiding both those whom we work with and then also yourself from like a leadership standpoint and the decisions you make?
We'd like to, always come back to kind of our team huddles and making sure, that we are shaping the purpose together and that we're all contributing to pieces of it. I just watched this. Do you ever watch The Bear, the episode of The Bear?
No, please share.
It's an Emmy award-winning show, and I think they won an Emmy last year. But basically, there's this person at the restaurant that they're working in, and he is just lacking purpose in his life. And so his cousin, who was a previous Michelin star chef, sent him to a Michelin restaurant, and he's given this menial task, and the task is to polish forks. And every day he's like, what am I doing here? Why did you send me here? And then all of a sudden, he's with a bigger team. And there's this part in the episode when they're like, look, there's people coming into this restaurant tonight. They've been trying to get a reservation for, years or months at least. And they're here with families. They're here for this celebration. And they know, being a Michelin star restaurant, why these people are showing up. And him being in on that meeting and seeing that this person is checking this person's checking this, we're all contributing to excellence. And I really love that. So I would like to take, learnings back to that, to my team, to be like, this, even in the most tiny tasks that we have, that, we're actually contributing to a bigger why.
And so I know that when we were talking about this, that you like, a purpose has been sort of an anchor to complexity. And so how is that? Like, how is it an anchor? Is it the, and I guess maybe we can start off with there's like, so how do you know, what does it look like when there isn't purpose? When there isn't a sense of purpose, and then what does it look like when there is? And then like, how can that play an anchoring role in people's lives?
Well, I've experienced both when I found myself lacking purpose, and it was all from leadership as well. So I was on this project and I felt completely just lost, and no one really knew what their end goal was. People were going in, they were checking off the boxes, but we didn't know what we were serving at all. And that experience really deeply impacted my mental health. And it just made me realize how critical it is for leaders to, kind of align that why and articulate the purpose. So, and then that government project leadership changed. And then we had this one leader, and people connected around him. And if to this day, 10 years later, if he's in town, people connect and meet up, and this project is long gone. So I think him being able to take us back to what our purpose was significant in being able to drive our goals. It wasn't just, about the KPIs, but we, had our team connecting in other ways as well.
So maybe like, what were the core things so it seems like, there's a sense of connection that can really come out of understanding, like, why are we doing what we're doing? And that can endure through like all the change, the transformation, the innovation, the new projects, new team members.
Mhm.
It almost feels like this is sort of something that brings you back, for that time where, you shared, and thank you so much for sharing, like how negatively impactful having that lack of sort of clarity. What were some of the things that you were experiencing under that other leadership that were different than in the new leadership? Like, what were some of the, like, those day-to-day experiences that you were having that sort of made all the difference?
I was showing up not knowing what I was doing. And from that, it impacted my personal health as well, my personal mental health. I just like, what's the point, kind of thing, right? What am I doing? Why am I here? But under the new leadership, they made you seen, right? You were seen, you were involved, you were connecting. There was direction, there was alignment, there was trust, and I think that was all anchored in that sense of purpose.
And so, like, when it could seem such like a vast thing, right? Is you know sometimes I even heard people talk about like how they're fatigued with this idea that we need to have like a vision for our life, and it could seem quite overwhelming to even try to like broach that topic. And so, what are some of the ways that you bring that into your team, like from a simple day-to-day experience in your leadership? How do you foster exactly those experiences that you realize? Because that seemed like that was a really defining moment in your leadership. Like, how do you foster that in your team and in what you do on a day-to-day?
On the day to day is like, it's really, celebrating the small contributions as well. It's not just about the big ones, just honoring also effort and intention, not just, meeting KPIs or that sort of thing. But, and then checking on people, like checking in, but not really, don't just check on them, but check in. Like, does this align with your sense of purpose?
And so do you weave that into like when you think about strategy? And so, it's really interesting. You've led right now, Coral Group's corporate wellness initiative for over 15 years. So maybe thinking about that journey, what sparked its creation and how has it sort of evolved over time into this expansive multi-country initiative today? Like how, like maybe you could just share a little snapshot on that and yeah, and then sort of this journey that you've gone in.
Yeah, so we've we launched somewhat of a, traditional, I guess you could say, wellness program over 15 years ago. And that was, we were really focused on nutrition and getting more physical activity in our life. And that has evolved into a more holistic approach. And then where we've connected with you on the mindfulness piece of the puzzle as well. We have a biometrics program, which you mentioned in the intro. We've, till most recently had the blue zones, people come down from the US that are looking to see, what are those environmental prompts that are going to nudge people into making healthier choices and healthier habits. So we've really grown the program and evolved over the years by just incorporating more pillars of wellness. And the blue zones, one of the things that they talk about is this living with purpose. And that's one of the things that they've seen in the places where people live the longest in the world, those that get to be centenarians, are those principles around living with purpose and meaning in their life.
Yeah, it's interesting how it comes a little bit full circle there. And this is something that at first you started just, it was sort of a one person start and then it sort of grew from there. So how did you get involved in this and what was your leadership journey from sort of entering into this program and sort of building it out? What did that look like?
Yeah, so it was just me at first. And then as it grew and people were connecting and wanting more and seeing the value in having a corporate wellness program at CG, we offer it through our medical plan to kind of all of our insurance and really take a community approach to that. It just grew to that we started having wellness coordinators on each island, to nurses and health coaches. And yeah, we got to this point where we were able to grow it. But through that, we've hired people with diverse backgrounds. But I think the biggest thing was, I mean, everyone's very, very skilled and has a great background in terms of education and experience. But I think the biggest thing was passion. If you hire people that are passionate and can rally around what we're doing, is getting people to create healthy habits for life that's going to better them, their families, their communities, that it grows in that way.
And so how did you get involved in that? Like what compelled you to be interested in this type of path for yourself as a leader? And because it seems like you've gone through so much change and transformation and there's like growth, expansion. Yeah, what sort of got you into this and how did you sort of support and sustain yourself through all of these experiences and growth that you've gone through?
So I've always been interested in health and wellness and helping people, achieve their goals. I was a personal trainer when I was in university, and then, but I see how the environment really impacts ourselves, and yeah, I want to be able to reach more people. So doing it through corporate wellness programs, and you can reach the corporate clients and then the community as well. So for me, it was how many people can I reach? How many people can I get them? If I can just get them to change this habit, it's going to have a trickle down effect. They're going to change their life. So for me, and I think my team members too, they have such a passion for health and wellness and impacting communities that it just makes sense to be kind of on this career path.
And so how do you sustain yourself?
How do I sustain myself?
Yeah,
Well,
what are some of the practices that you do to support yourself throughout this, and how do you sort of keep yourself, connected to your own sense of purpose?
yeah, so it's I use all the resources in our programming, especially some of the Mindful Institute resources as well. But yeah, it's just going back to practice what we preach. We have all these resources, and through our wellness program, there's an app that we have, and there's every single pillar of health that you can imagine. And if we can just get you to engage in one thing that you're interested in, it's going to impact your kind of other habits as well. So, for example, the more I'm going to move, the more water I'm probably going to drink. Whereas, it's about bad habits that takes you down another path.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's something that's come up in a lot of the conversations that we've been having with a number of leaders is like the sacrifices that we have to make, in the pursuit of, the ambitions that we have, and also these practices that we just sort of need to continuously focus on to help support us, and how multifaceted that has to be. Just like what you're saying, there's integrating exercise, integrating just simple basic building blocks of drinking enough water and sleep. And when we focus on that as leaders, that really can ripple into our day-to-day lives. And it really seems like you've carved out a role in like a field where you can have your life's focus on wellness and health and well-being. And this is something that you're really immersed in. And, many people who are just listening right now might, their direction might be completely different, And so what are some of those, like those foundational building blocks that you feel like leaders need to focus on, or to help support themselves? Like based on the experiences that you've had, building out all these initiatives, like what are some of those sort of basic fundamentals?
to support to support kind of in terms of
Yeah, their own well-being, keeping their minds clear and supporting them in the sort of their resilience, clarity of mind. What are some of those core building blocks that you would recommend to others?
I mean, if you talked about having kind of a vision. If you have this kind of mindset and vision of where you want to be, where you want to go, but be open to changes because things are changing all the time, right? But if you have that and you have your values and you can always come back to that. There might be a lot of noise going around, but if you have kind of a clear sense of why you're doing this, where you're going, maybe not how you get there, because that can always change. But I think if you can kind of anchor it into, okay, this is what we want the outcome to be, then you can always come back to that.
And so it seems like mindset is like one of the core foundations, where really understanding your why. Why am I doing what I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing? And what are my values? And is this aligned? Is the work that I'm doing right now and the direction we're going, or at least my interactions with my employees? This is something that's come up like as a core theme in a lot of what we've just been discussing right now too. How that can help support. I know for myself, it's been really interesting. I think that really, when I think about the changes that I've gone through, especially over the 15 years that the Mindful Institute has been operating, and the changes that we've gone through, really understanding like why am I doing this work has been a real core grounding force to help me stay resilient, and bounce back at all those times when it's like, oh my gosh, there's all this work and all these changes, all these new technologies, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, with kids too. I know you've got little ones, it can be overwhelming, right? And returning back to this sense of, well, I'm in this to support others, and I find what's been really helpful for me is making sure that purpose is greater than myself,
Mm-hmm.
and it's interesting you've shared that too, where it's like, how can I create the greatest impact that I can create in other people's lives? And
Mm-hmm.
so I know that when we were talking, there was like a full circle moment for you. There's this, because you were talking about environmental prompts, a health
Mm-hmm.
policy, community design. Like, so what was sort of like a defining moment in your or some defining moments in your leadership journey. I know right now the Blue Zone initiative being something so new, like you were mentioning that there was sort of like a start to all of it all. And can you maybe build on that a little bit, or share how did all this sort of full circle moment come in your life just recently?
Yeah, so I did have a full circle moment when we just did a Blue Zone launch here in Bermuda. So we hosted Nick Butner from Blue Zones, and we had a group of panelists, and it was just kind of in that moment, I was like, oh, this seems familiar. So about almost 20 years ago, I actually did my graduate thesis on environmental prompts and how can we work with different sectors to create those environmental nudges to make the healthy choice the easiest choice. So creating walking paths, being able to have community gardens that are accessible. And I was a policy analyst actually at the time, doing an internship when I was doing my thesis on this. And so we integrated some of these things into Health Canada's some of our programming at the time. And so some of the things he was saying at the Blue Zone event were very similar to what I've done. So I'm like, okay, I guess something's aligned here. It's not really expensive.
Yeah, well, so yeah, so it's sort of, it's sort of a testament to that ambition, that intention, what you hold as a value and something that you're placing your focus on. If you maintain that, it can sort of lead to something that you may not be aware of right now, but just down the road, it can become, there may be a full circle moment, right? And you can see that sense of connection to the work that you do.
Absolutely.
And so just like, what are environmental prompts? Because I think I find it fascinating that making the healthiest thing the easiest thing to do. I think there's just so much value in that. Yeah, could you just like, what is the role of environmental prompts? I guess like maybe even linked to organizations, like maybe even CG, and CG, that I know the tagline is where people come first. And, I know there's a lot of work that you've done with leadership and culture, and there's a lot of events that you're engaging in that make health easy to access. What does that look like? Yeah, maybe you could just sort of build on that a little bit, and what are the types of activities that you're really focused on now to advance that?
Yeah, absolutely. So people like to kind of blame the individual for, being overweight and not moving, but our whole environment is designed now for convenience. So people aren't moving. And if you look at the stuff Bermuda gets everything imported from the US, the packaging, the processed foods, it's all in front of us and it's easy. And it's not really, I don't want to blame the individual, but what we can do in our wellness programs and in the community is kind of create spaces where people can connect, where people can access healthy, affordable food, where they can move more. If we have, safe biking lanes and walking paths, it's going to make the environment a lot more conducive to being able to be healthy. If we can go to a restaurant and there's healthy choices on the menu, people are going to, that's what they're going to go towards. It's like those little nudges.
So what are
Whereas
the activities? Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
no, I was going to say, whereas if our environment is not conducive, if we can't walk places and we're driving everywhere and we're going through the drive-through, then that's not very helpful to our health.
And so, what are some of the things that, you and your leadership team at CG, what are some of the great things that they're doing to support the culture at CG in fostering this type of environment? What are some of yeah, what does it look like? What does it look like at CG on a day-to-day basis, and that sort of foster this sort of wellness culture that you're all bringing to Bermuda and the islands? But as an organization, yeah, how does it show up? And maybe a little bit about, yeah, what is your leadership doing that you think is just like, yeah, this is really, really good?
Yeah, so we're a little bit spoiled at CG in terms of being able to connect socially. I think there's always something every single week or month at least in terms of community events. So last weekend we had a garbage cleanup day, and so all staff came out and supported that. We're doing Relay for Life, so we're participating in one of our staff organizes every year Relay for Life in support of cancer. So everyone's going to be going out this weekend to do the walk. So there's so many opportunities for social, but also collective things as well. We're going to be sponsoring a community garden coming up. We've done a lot of community gardening in the Bahamas team. So yeah, it's just making us connect over healthy things. So making it health more accessible, but there's also that connection piece.
And so what role has your leadership team played in fostering this? Is this something that you feel requires like ongoing support and attention to, or is it something that you can sort of invite, the teams to take leadership on? Like, what's the role of leadership in creating and fostering like a culture that sort of seems to be quite thriving?
Well, first, leadership is, supportive, and has always been supportive of particularly the wellness initiatives as well, and participate themselves. So I think that kind of walking the talk as well, some of the programming and the culture.
And how, like, what does that look like? I'm like walking the talk. Is it participating? I know I'm actually quite lucky to have worked with your leadership team, and many of whom I think are still there. This was, I think, maybe around 7 years ago, 8 years ago, something along those lines, where I was able to lead a leadership, like an executive development focused on mindfulness, which then led to Mindful Leader program being integrated in your offerings. Is it sort of participating and showing that this is something that we're doing and we hope that you're going to do this? Or is it around messaging, all of those elements? Or is it day-to-day interactions? What comes up for you when you think about sort of like, how do you model that and how do you foster that leadership support?
I think it's all of the above. We have leadership participating, leading, and just engaging with staff on a day-to-day basis, whether it's through social interactions or participating in a lot of the events. Everyone kind of comes together as a team and supports.
Amazing. Fantastic. So I have a couple other questions here, but before we get to it, maybe talk about a little bit about this Blue Zone initiative in particular. So, based on what you've been learning now as you roll out this initiative at CG, and what are some of the key insights that? Oh, first off, like what is the Blue Zone initiative, and maybe what are some of these key insights that you think are really, really important for others to know, that, or at least for yourself, that have really stood out from panels that you've engaged in, your work that has sort of led to this moment for it to even arise as part of CG. Yeah, if you could share a little bit more on that, though, I'm really interested to
Yeah.
learn more.
So blue zones are the places in the world where people live the longest, so live to be 100 centenarians. And those are in Greece and Sardinia. There's a place in Loma Linda. And through their research, what they discovered was it was all simple things that help people live longer in their environment. So people connecting with one another, that was a big one. So there's a big social kind of part around that. Loneliness is one of there's research that shows that you live, you don't live as long with the loneliness connection.
Yeah, great. So maybe I'll bring it right back from the top. Okay, so
Yeah.
So I have some additional questions that I would love to dive into. But before we go into that, tell me more about the Blue Zone initiative, and what are some of these key insights coming out of it that you think is just that you found very valuable for yourself when it comes to thinking about the health and wellness and leadership even as well.
Yeah, sure. So for those that might not know, blue zones are those places in the world where people live the longest, so often to the age of 100. And those are in places like Costa Rica and Greece and Sardinia, where they studied. They found that it's not really genetics, but it's more the simple things in terms of the environment that are helping them to live longer. So they're gardening more. There's a place in Sardinia where they're actually they have to walk up to hit the hill to church every day. And it's those small kind of things in their environment. One thing that they found was that social connection piece was helping people live longer as well. It's these people that had connections and support since they were in their youth and then into almost the age of 100. So there's a lot of that. There's a Japanese term in one of the places that they found, and that was the living with purpose piece. And that was really interesting. So being able to have purpose. And a lot of these places, people didn't actually retire, but they found a new role, or they continue to work in another area. So it was very interesting to see a lot of these. But in terms of creating Blue Zone, where their work comes in the US. So they want to take these lessons from the places where people live the longest, take it back to the US, and what can we do in our environment? So they're literally taking the principles and connecting people with policies that are going to support this, and places, and literally transforming communities. And that could be like putting in bike lanes, or just having places that are central for people to connect with one another. So lots of great work there, and we're going to be planning on integrating those principles into our corporate wellness programs, but also in the community as well. So, for example, we just sponsored a farm, so we're going to have a CG farm, and there's a pergola in the middle of it. So we're going to be able to do cooking classes and teach people and teach youth, like, where does your food come from, and what can we make, and but you're also connecting with one another as well. So it's kind of bridging all those things together. So I really like their methodology, and hopefully Bermuda can become one of the first blue zones in the Atlantic.
Amazing. And so Bermuda is where you're the head office and where you're primarily based. But from my understanding, I mean, this is an initiative that we're going to roll out across how many islands and across the Caribbean and Atlantic?
So at the moment, we have kind of three kind of legacy islands that we call it. Bermuda, Bahamas, and Cayman are our three biggest, and then and Barbados. And we have licenses to go more into the Southern Caribbean as well. So more to come on that.
I think there's just so much that we can take away, and it's such a refreshing and interesting way to think about from a leadership standpoint what's possible in terms of what we can do within our organizational settings to foster health and well-being, being inspired by some of these blue zone initiatives, which is something that seems like you've been integrating throughout your teams within the organization for quite some time, something that you've had to focus on for so many years. These providing simple ways for people to easily connect with healthful choices, providing opportunities to connect with each other. I know this is something that you really value, shared it here, being able just to check in, not just check on, but check in with your team members, to be able to refresh that sense of connection with each other and to create opportunities for connection. And then the third piece, which is so interesting, ikigai is something that I came across, and I'm not sure if that's the same term.
It's
Was that this ikigai is this, how can all these aspects, the things that we love to do, the things that we sort of need to do from a monetary perspective, what do we have the skills to do, and all these things, how do they come together in identify what we value and how that can come together in that sense of purpose. It's really interesting how you share that that's another thing, and how valuable that can be for leadership and for teams. Because just as you shared too, like how you've had this experience where when that's not there, when these experiences of connection and the connection both with each other and your sense of understanding of the direction you're going, people can feel lost and disconnected. And when we foster that and take the time to foster that, there's a greater sense of grounding and anchoring throughout whatever it is that we're going through. So, I think that's a really great leadership lesson. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Something that comes up for me, it's just building on this, and it seems like purpose as well is something that can change over time. And here as well, as you think of going into retirement and changing from one organization to another organization, is that sort of connection with purpose, is it open to change, and does it move and evolve over time? Has that evolved for you, or is there sort of is there a way of sort of identifying like a core purpose that sort of leads you through your life? What's your approach to that?
So I think it can everything's always evolving, right? There's your core purpose, but I mean it can be fluid and to a point, but we're everything's always, I hope we're evolving anyway. um but maybe you can just take me back to, Michael, what's.
Yeah, for sure. So it's interesting, you know, so maybe bringing it back full circle for this, when I know because purpose can just seem so nebulous too,
Yeah.
right? And so sometimes we might think that, well, if we don't have it, we'll never have it, or if we have to have the perfect purpose, and that's going to guide us through our entire life. Um, but it seems like what you were sharing is that it does evolve, and that's actually an important part of sort of the leadership and life journey, is this continuous learning and exploring. And there are some of these core elements like that you get connected to, like values, right? And I think that's came up for you quite a bit. So is that alignment, does that align with you? There's just always this sense of growth and evolution, but then there's also sort of this core understanding of like, what is it that's moving me in the right direction? Is that linked to values, or is there some other elements to it?
I think it can be linked to values, but also I guess just being linked to that your work actually matters too. And I like what you said. It doesn't need to be perfect, but people need to feel like they matter in their job and what they're doing. So I think, yeah, absolutely, it evolves, but at the core, it has to feel purposeful. Like you're change you're making a difference. At least.
Lovely. Amazing. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. It's really interesting, really thinking about, for ourselves. And this makes me reflect. I try to, every 6 months, really clarify and to take some time to think about the year ahead and what's my intention for the year ahead. I take time to journal. I go on a retreat when I can. So once a year, it's a week-long retreat with my close friends, colleagues, advisors, mentors, and there's both sort of taking time to check in with myself and nourish myself, but also to make sure that I'm connected with that greater goal in my life of what I want to bring forward and the impact I want to create as a leader. And so, I think this brings a little bit more understanding in terms of, what I can do to foster the sense of connection in my life. And it's simple, right? It doesn't have to be something just epic and big. It's actually quite attainable, and how to craft our lives in a way that allows us to make those easy choices. So thank you so much for bringing all of that wisdom to us and your leadership insights and your journey and growth here. If people wanted to, if our audience wanted to learn more about CG's wellness and Blue Zone work, where could they access to, more insights? Where could they learn more about your work?
We have everything on our website. So you could go to cgswellness.com. Also, the handle for our Instagram is at cgswellness.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Jacqueline. I'm sure our listeners will love this conversation, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Michael.
This brings us to the end of another episode of Leading Minds Revealed, and I'll see you all on the next one. Thank you so much, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Leading Minds Revealed podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights, join the conversation, and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.